Trying. Oh my God!
Don't you know after this many years you can't win?
No, I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel Sains. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. That's my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to review episode 666. That's 666. This is narrated by Thayer David, written by Ron Sproat, directed by Dan Curtis. This is the wrapping up the time trap. But we do get some stuff in the past too.
Yes.
I do love the fact that Ben Stokes comes to Barnabas's rescue here. What did you think of Ben Stokes to the rescue, guys?
What else would he do?
That's right. His enormous strength extends past his particular aroma. So that's
mountain grown. Jewel?
Yeah.
If you had to name the three things that Ben Stokes' aroma is composed of and smells of, what would those three things be?
Let's see. If I had to list three things that Ben smelled like, let's see. Sweat. Probably
Dirty sweat.
Yeah, sweat, dirty sweat. I like what the wife chimed in there. And probably Angelique's perfume because he was around her a good bit.
It's true. That would be tincture of spoiled lobster.
Yeah, there you go.
That would really give Barnabas a lot of mixed emotions. I mean, in a sense memory kind of a thing, especially once he becomes a vampire and his senses become enhanced.
Why do you smell of spoiled lobster?
He must then be fundamentally somewhat aroused
Probably
by Ben Stokes, as if he weren't already.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jules, is that what you intended?
Well, here's the thing. He saves Barnabas from being staked by Lieutenant Forbes here in this episode. So Ben, like I said, Ben Stokes to the rescue. What did you guys think here? Ben saving the night, if you will, or the day.
I think he gave everybody every opportunity to walk out alive, or at least stay alive. But obviously, for the most practical self-defense, he was not inclined to do so. So I thought that it was, again, it sort of rights everything that didn't need to be changed. So you have less butterflies to worry about crushing and messing up the future with Forbes gone.
Worried about the timeline.
Yeah.
That will not mean anything to this show.
Oh, it won't. But one can indulge in an academic exercise. But basically, yeah, it gives Ben a chance to sort of just kind of reestablish who he is and why he's going to end up, getting the best of all worlds until 1840. He's going to get a piece of land. He's going to get his freedom. He's going to learn how to read. All of this sort of thing. Is going to happen for him, and this is one of the good reasons why he feels really bad about what he's done too, and he's panicked about it. He's not like this cold-blooded guy because he never really was a criminal. He just was a guy that got caught taking a few slices of or a few hunks of bread, and ended up going into indentured servitude for it. Sort of had split luck on that. Joshua was bad luck, but Barnabas was good luck, and so he ended up with Barnabas, and that's why he's.
And
sense.
Yes, Joshua was bad luck, but Joshua was the one who ultimately executes Barnabas's desires.
It does,
and so none of the good things would have happened if Joshua had not put them into action.
That's correct. But Barnabas's plea is what made that happen at the very end. But yes, you're right. Joshua still had the final say. So he decided to do the right thing. which also sort of absolves him of some of the bad stuff.
I kind of wonder how much of a bad guy Joshua really was.
I don't think
If
he
we're looking at it kind of that, of absolution and so on.
right, but I think I mean, he had an enormous amount of guilt about what happened to Barnabas, and some of that's rightfully so. I mean, his inflexibility sort of caused a lot of things to happen.
So let's play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
During all of that, where was he a good guy? Where was he surprisingly liberal?
In his ethical and moral assessment of Nathan Forbes, he was definitely a good guy in terms of that. He was not a good guy in terms of feeling sorry for Nathan. He did not feel sorry for Nathan. Nobody felt sorry for Nathan by that point in time. But he, he recognized what was going on with that. And he thought that, I mean, that's sort of in defense of Millicent in a lot of ways. It's in defense of a lot of situations like that. He also goes to Naomi before, things go completely bad for her, and, sort of makes some amends there.
How did he I'm sorry.
Yeah, after being rather cruel to her about, various things like her gender and her drinking and, all of these things that,
She can't help the fact that he's not married to a sober man, which is, I guess, what he wants. If he wants the antithesis of those
or
things.
at least a drunk man,
Yeah,
But yes, it's very true. But I think he realizes that his intractability really translated to cruelty where it came to Naomi. He finds, he figures that out almost too late and ultimately too late, but he does. He figures that out. And the worm turns also with the fact that he is unable to kill his son, even though he's like, "You're a horrible monster, da, 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 but you're my son." And at that point, Barnabas has to say, "Do not love me," because if you do, you are dead. But the possibility is there for that sort of parental love after everything that's happened and after all the disapproval and after all the horror and everything else. Also speaks well of Joshua's character, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does good stuff during the trial.
Mm-hmm.
I think
he does. He
does good stuff.
He wants to help Victoria.
He tolerates Angelique as a daughter-in-law.
He does.
He does not have to do that.
No.
So, all things considered.
Yeah, no, he's not a bad man. He just, some things that he does turn out badly, I guess.
Oh, sure. What I do is I imagine this were taking place in Martinique. I kind of flip a few things, and it's Andre Dupre,
right,
who's having to deal with this. And I don't think Andre would have been that nice a guy.
Maybe not. No, he's pretty dismissive. Andre was pretty and easily roused to outrage. Several times he shows that. So, yeah. No, I agree. I think Joshua's taciturn sternness, I think, probably was born out of necessity originally, but he couldn't compartmentalize it and show more sort of caring in his private life, where he was running a business. He had to be tough-minded and all of this sort of thing. And he wanted his son to be, successful, and he thought that was the way to do that. But he also kind of transferred that into the personal problems that arose.
For me, from a literary point of view, if I have license, from a literary point of view, literary license.
Which episode?
I miss those guys. I like them. Point of view of that. I think Joshua may be the most one of the most interesting and dimensioned characters on the show. I think he has an arc that's fun to follow, and it's fairly easy to follow, but it's not too easy. Where you go, oh yeah, okay, it's that.
No.
I think his backstory has interesting elements to it. I think his actions are motivated by a lot of different things that are fun to explicate and look at. I Ellie Naomi, tragic alcoholic,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't make her a great character. It's just like, okay, yeah. But when I look at a character I consider literary, I look at a character who at any point in the timeline could do anything.
Right.
We're really, it's like, could that have been a Joshua move? Yes, if he had reasoned it this and this way.
Right.
Could that have been and so there he feels very much alive.
And he's
to me.
complex in that respect. So
Yes.
they can do these things and think these things out in different ways.
So my question for you, and for Jewel, should he return, is this: if you had to pick 3 other characters in Dark Shadows who are equally literary, not just who've had a lot of episodes,
Right.
but who really have that interesting complexity where, I think you would want to sit down and read a book about them or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Who would they be?
T. Elliot Stokes.
Yeah.
Angelique has shown a propensity to make different
so.
decisions
Yes.
at different points in the road.
Yeah.
Let me think. What else? Quentin Collins, who has a rather dramatic arc from one point to where he ends up being.
But you know what? I would call it somewhat obvious, and in my opinion, once you step back and you see the whole thing play out, and I think, well, I was gonna say, you kind of know what he's gonna do, and but the part that makes it not obvious, and I think the part that is really worth delving into in the writing, it has the least amount of material to back it up, is all the weird stuff with Daphne, and how those are kind of the wages of sin for his life. Because up until Daphne is like, okay, he's a kid until he realizes he has a daughter and he has a son, and one of them's dead, and then he gets real sad, and then he gets real responsible, and then he gets cured, and then he becomes head of the family, and it's boring. And Quentin. And I love Quentin. I've written about Quentin.
Well, he also gets short shrift in 1972. He gets so underused in that storyline.
But what are you going to do? He's already psychologically healed of his major wound, which is leads to the alcoholism and everything like that. And he's as immortal as they want to let him be.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes he can suffocate, but the painting has access to oxygen.
Right.
So, and so when you have that type of character, that's it. Unless someone chooses to use the concept of immortality against him. I talk in class a lot about Wade Wilson. I think his last name's Wilson. The Deadpool. I say, one of the reasons why I think Deadpool behaves the way he does is that he is just now encountering the existential weight of knowing that when the sun goes out and when the only thing to feel is the cold vacuum of space, he will feel it forever.
Right.
And what a thing.
Well,
that thing to live with.
The fact that he, as a paramilitary, he was psychologically abused.
Yes.
Tremendously. So there's that too. But yes, the realization would be a further crushing blow to that.
So that's something that Quentin, I don't think, has even begun to think about. You
How
know,
about the potential of Count Petofi?
what do you mean the potential of Count Petofi?
I mean the potential of him to go the same route that Angelique went in terms of his associations with Collinwood and Collinsport and the people in it.
Wait, are you talking about Petofi as a subject to write about?
Yes.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, Count Petofi's great.
Yeah.
But Count Petofi also is, I think there's less, oddly enough, I think there's less kind of sort of ambiguous richness to it. And he's just fun. You know, he's ambiguous in the sense that a fun, chaotic, neutral character in D&D is going to be ambiguous. Maybe he'll do the right thing, maybe he'll do the wrong thing, which ultimately means that when the chips are down, he's going to do the right thing. I think.
There's also literary gold to mine, I think, in his backstory.
Oh, God, yes. How did he get? I think, you know, interestingly, in the cosmic sense, we are seeing him at the least interesting. He's still a bloody interesting character, but I think we're seeing him at the least interesting time in his arc, kind of.
Yeah, he's completely distracted by the fact he needs to get the hand at this point. That's his, you know.
That's right.
The hand.
And then escape gypsies. I got to get the hand and then get the hell away from these gypsies.
Yep.
So, and it's nice to see him so mission oriented, but we haven't seen him that existentially oriented, which would be leading up to it.
Right.
And then
what happens afterwards, because
and I think
he does exist afterwards. I mean, I think they were definitely
completely. There's no question in my mind that he is still alive today. And I kind of think that Hitler did it.
Yeah.
I think that he was perfectly happy to be a war profiteer, which I'm sure he was during World War I. And I think the mass scale slaughtering of so many people, he might have even been in with the Nazis at one point, especially given their attitude towards the gypsies.
Right.
But I think he has too much compassion just at weird times. Too much of that exists as potential energy to just leave it alone. And I think seeing the Holocaust and seeing Stalin's purges and seeing Pol Pot and seeing death on a scale that he had not even considered. You know, because he's not unleashing plagues on people.
The irony of his compassion is, or the potential for it, the irony there lies in the fact that he becomes interested in a single individual, and it can change the way that he views a larger situation.
Yes. Yeah. So it might have happened earlier. It's just he is now, he's regained some humanity by being invested in a human.
Yeah, what if he had met Anne Frank on the street?
Would he have known who she was and what she was dealing with?
Not then, probably. Although being of age, he probably could have followed her arc after that point if he was interested in her, without having to actually be present.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, depending on where he was and what happened to him, if he skipped that period of time, or if he were in Antarctica. If you look up the stuff in Antarctica, it's really weird. Antarctica's very strange.
Yeah. There's also the connection that he would have to the Nazi fascination with the occult. I mean, he's literally a walking artifact of the occult.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, rather than sever the hand, which I don't think would have occurred to Hitler. I think Hitler would have thought, well, you cut off the hand, you cut off its power.
Right.
That it's not an individual thing. I think Hitler would have tried everything he could to get Petofi on his side.
Right.
And he needed to imprison Petofi, to find who Petofi cared about, and, you know, torture them until Petofi did what Hitler needed. That's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. There's a lot of different directions you could go writing a story like that. Absolutely.
I think first for Joshua, and then I'll get into characters to write about. But I think for Joshua first, that here's a guy who wanted his eldest son to marry, Josette for money.
Mhm.
He was all about wealth. He, I don't know if the writers were sort of channeling an Ebenezer Scrooge-esque character without being a Christmas Carol. I don't know if they were doing that, but I do know that this character was very. He treated everybody like they were beneath him and like they were a child to him, even his own brother. He even suggests to his own brother, "Oh, you should marry Millicent." His own brother's like, "No," but
Yeah.
so
He was of the old school where you arrange marriages to the
uh,
benefit of the families, that kind of thing. And he, I don't know if it was so much looking down. Well, it was probably looking down on the decisions some of these people were making. It's like marry for love, my God, that kind of thing, because of who he was and how he had been raised to be successful. And he followed that path and figured probably everybody should follow it too.
yeah.
And sometimes that would translate into being, cruel in his attitude. But
Well,
for him, it was practical. It was survival.
yeah. I mean, we make justly so we make presentism a whipping boy here and there.
Sure.
It might be a little bit of a presentist reading
Yeah.
to say that the marry for love outside of business, what an obscenity,
Mhm.
perspective is so weird. I mean, that's a very modern.
Well, it was also weird in terms of, you know, some of the people that he was asking to debate were resistant to that idea. So maybe they were the ones being weird, but there was still a conflict there, and it was still causing pain.
Sure. I kind of wonder how they would respond en masse
Mhm.
or Temple, if they heard our perspective on marrying for love.
Sure. They probably wouldn't understand it because that's a relatively new concept. It's only 150 years old or 200 years old.
It's interesting.
It would
Is
have started not long after the period of 1790s, but it wouldn't have really reached its total vogue much later than that.
I have an odd tangent then to explore. As I don't remember who Julie is. So
There.
But but it's empty.
Yeah, I know, but I think he's there.
You sure it's empty?
Yeah.
Julie, are you there?
Jewel, are you there?
I'm here.
That's what I thought. See, he's just behind his podcast.
Can't see you. Do you know that?
Well,
it's okay if you're putting on lipstick or something for the next
podcast. My camera isn't picking me up video wise, but it's picking me up audio. So that's
you are. Okay. Yeah. So we just wanted
to
be assured that you were there. Yeah.
Would you like to make this a two-parter where you come back and it would be for the viewers just another YouTube video, but for us we would wait 2 or 3 minutes and see if you could get this restarted so we could see you.
No, it's fine. I'll say this, that I think with Joshua, the moment he sort of starts to become sympathetic is after Forbes is accusing Barnabas of strangling Millicent, and he goes to the old house and discovers his son and has that conversation. I think that's really, and Barnabas explains to him what he is.
It's one of the all-time great scenes in the series.
It's that scene there is the start of sort of sympathetic Joshua in a lot of ways. In every
my
way.
number one episode is that episode.
Yeah.
It's really. And I think too, like you've seen the death of your son, you've seen the death of your daughter, and then you see the death of your wife who leaves a suicide note to boot. I mean, this man has literally witnessed the death of his heirs, the people he was going to pass this all down to, and there was not a damn thing he could do about it to stop it. And I think that sort of self-realization makes Joshua understand that, okay, money wasn't everything. And by the end, when he's talking to Barnabas and he's changing all this history, because he does change history and say, well, Barnabas went to England and he died. That's how the history book records
Sure.
it. Tori Winters was right. Then he changes it again and says, oh, Jeremiah didn't die in a duel. And Barnabas is like, oh, I wish that could be so. So everything in the things we learned in the history book are lies for reasons to protect family secrecy.
Yeah, that's the last conversation they have. So they have several conversations. They have
Yeah.
the discovery conversation, and then this one, in which I think you're right. The last one that they have together is where Joshua resolves to do all of these things to protect the family, to keep safe the people that Barnabas cares about that are still around, all of these sorts of things.
Yeah. I think from a writing standpoint, the one thing I would love to dwell deep into is not just how magic works in the realm of dark shadows, but where does it channel from? Where is every person that has a magical sort of speck of power? Where are they channeling it from? Is it from the earth? Where did they get it from? Is it a blood descendant thing? That's something they don't really delve too deep into with certain aspects. I mean, things change. The writers change things for sure, but it all started somewhere. Like, okay,
Magic is a skill and an action rather than a history.
right,
In Dark
right.
Shadows.
It's like, but with magic itself, when you get into the idea of magic, I always think of, okay, somebody could be born special with powers, and would you know it unless they showed it to you? That's sort of the concept of old school wizardry in a lot of ways.
I think in the
No,
case of Angelique, it's passed down through her
yeah,
childhood and the people that she was exposed to, a lot of the wise women and so on. That's how
yeah,
she gets it.
yeah. And with Petofi, it's like, well, okay, is Petofi born of the earth? Does he honestly have a mom and dad? We
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
he was immortal.
Oh, what? Yeah,
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah,
mhm,
he it was like he has. When I went back and looked at my history, he had specific ages where certain things happened to him.
yeah,
There are certain
yeah,
years tied to his existence that make sense. I mean, his lifespan is incredible, but yeah,
yeah. I mean, here's a guy who owns a unicorn as a pet. I mean, not too many people in Dark
Right.
Shadows can make that claim. And then he ends up killing it because he was turned into a werewolf.
Right. And
So,
he actually, at the same time he was cursed with a werewolf, he clearly had some other powers that were
you know,
somewhat resting in his hand. That's why they took his hand away from him to punish him or to trade for release of his werewolf curse.
and on the other side of that coin, there is the gypsies who also have their own powers
They do.
that aren't necessarily Pitofe powers. It's like, okay, where did all these people get these powers from? They aren't all supernatural beings. They aren't.
No,
Barnabas self-explanatory. He was cursed to be a
he was cursed.
vampire.
Right.
He could. Okay, Barnabas does learn black magic. Okay, did the gypsies just learn black magic and master it, or were they given magic by another being? Again, there's just things we don't know that
Right,
I
but
think
if
could be
you if
written
you
about.
if you think about the real Rome and their traditions, which include however much you want to believe it, or whether it's Bajor or whatever, but it includes connections to the earth, mystical connections to the earth, and mystical connections to magical things. That's probably there is a history there, so that would be the historical aspect, I guess. Would be the culture of the Rom or Gypsy, as it's put in the show, would be a historical sort of thing. It would be something that would be just passed down, like the belief. Odell is an earth god or goddess, and they're elemental. A lot of their spirits that they believe in, and cast for luck and cast for marriage and do all these things. And we see Magda doing incantations occasionally. We see King Johnny consecrating the scimitar and all these various other things, and so it's ritualized. So there's history behind that, real history, I think.
Yeah. Again, it's something I think I wouldn't mind it being explored in a written form to read about. It would be really interesting.
Yeah.
That, and from a character standpoint, the actual Collins family that lived in Europe. That would be something I would love to read about. Pre going over to America to build the Collins Empire. So that's mine too.
Most likely they came from either England, Ireland, or both, I guess, probably. Collins' name is common in both of those places.
Oh, Collins? Yeah, they're Irish,
Yeah.
which is odd given the status of the Irish at that point. So I'm not quite sure by what means, they did this. And I assume they lived in England for a while, so very Anglicanized Irish.
Maybe old Caleb Collins may have been a fishmonger from way back, or something, and turned it into a major industry. And
they accomplished, I was going to say, if they accomplished something nautical because even before they were fishermen, they were shipbuilders.
Shipbuilders, that's right.
And so, we know how the English love their ships. And, I just imagine, having some engineering innovation or something like that really equipped the English to, handle themselves against the Spanish Armada, something along those lines, that would have put them in very, very, very good stead. Knighted or something like that.
Sure, maybe they developed a way to speed dry dock boats or something,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that Queen Elizabeth would have been very happy about that.
Sure.
I'm going to throw a sort of a mind fuckery, if you will, here. Were they born Collinses, or did they just take the name Collins?
Oh, I don't think anyone who's really into power and power on the level they are would have willingly picked an Irish name.
Irish name, right.
And that's a shame. I mean, I say that as a McCray.
But, of course, in Gold Key world, their names were Colnison, and they changed it somewhere.
They were what?
In the latter Gold Key comics, they are actually of Viking blood.
Really?
Their last name is Colnison.
That's wonderful. That's hilarious.
I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What's you guys' favorite scene in this episode? 666. Yeah.
It's the whole scene for me where Willie is gradually discovering what's happened to Barnabas and how they're going to find him.
Man.
I think this is really one of the only times we get to see the instincts, the correct instincts of Willie Loomis, and how he's piecing it together from previous experience plus his instinct about what's going on. And if he doesn't use his instinct, he's going to use the logic of Julia. Well, you've just already been at the mausoleum. There was nobody there. Oh, no, he's there now. I'm here.
Willie, you've been there.
Yeah.
Come on, babe.
So, yeah, I like that scene. I like that scene a lot because it's also a scene in which Willie is actually he is the catalyst protagonist in that scene. Makes that happen. That what we're going to see as a rescue.
It would have been nice.
Yeah.
And Dark Shadows can't slow down for this, but it's too bad that they can't. It's just a scene where Barnabas gets to sit down with Willie at the end of the night and say, "You did great.
Yeah.
Julia told me what you did.
Yeah.
That was really good.
That
That
was
was really good. I'm glad it was you that got me out of the coffin twice.
twice. Yes.
Twice. Thank you.
Sorry I bit you on the wrist the first time, but you know how that goes.
I was hungry.
There's no time for head pats in DS.
Yeah, no.
There really is, and
No.
that's, to me, that is one of the places where the soap opera format, I think, really hurts the show.
Mm-hmm.
Because and yet as fans, that means that those moments have to live up here.
Right.
And that's another opportunity for us to invest in the process of watching the show and living with the show.
I will say there is one other time that I can think of right off the top of my head where they did kind of attempt that, and that's when they buried Barnabas after the bat bit him in 1968, and they're standing over the grave, and they're just trying to decide what to do. And Julia's telling him, wait a minute, you can go back to Wincliffe, not as a patient, but as an employee, and I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
No, and so they're doing all this sort of thing. So there's a sort of a connection that's made there that you don't often see on Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
It's so nice. You know, that's one of the things that makes the investment in Dark Shadows so great.
Yeah.
Is when we get those moments, because they are so rare, and that is such a treat for I'll dare I say it, putting up with the length of the storytelling of the show, because it is the show's greatest. It's the show's greatest curse, and it's its greatest blessing.
Yep.
Yeah. It's also too, you get to see payoffs like when during the Leviathan arc, when Willie's given a choice to stay and go. Barnabas isn't forcing him, and Willie does choose to stay out of loyalty and friendship. I think that's one of the biggest defining moments too of those two characters together.
It beats bussing tables at Denny's.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. My favorite scene, because we have a different person doing the voice and a different person doing is the appearance of Josette's ghost. I love a good ghost scene, and they do it really well here. And I just love the reaction. Grayson Hall and John Carlin do not miss a beat at all, and it's great to see when you have two pros just going at it. They're searching for Barnabas. They haven't given up hope. And yeah, Willie's, you know what? You know, I can't do this. Julia can't do this, but Barnabas, he can do anything. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, he can.
Well, he just threw himself into the past. So
yeah,
all things are possible at this point.
Yeah, which is really cool.
I got a tangent. I got to ask about this. Is about Willie Loomis. Do we know what he was doing during the Roxanne year? You know, when he was doing well, when he's, you know, wearing the tie, and, you know, when he has to choose to go back to Collinwood, you know, during Leviathans and so on, and take care of business. Do we know what he was doing for a job or for a living? Does it say?
I don't think it does, really. It's just he talks about Roxanne / Roseanne, because he does call her that at one point, that he's met this woman, and, you know, they're really, I imagine him turning his handyman skills, yes, they were too, turning his handyman skills into a nice little cottage industry somewhere.
I have a thought. Just to, you know, because I enjoy.
He's actually drawing a paycheck, you know, with Barnabas.
Sure. There was in New York, there was an amusement park. This was in the shadow of Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
There was an attempt to do an 365 days a year amusement park. I forgot what it was called, but on Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast, Al Roker was talking about it. Of all things,
what? Was in New York?
I think it was in New York, and I think it would have been in the 60s, maybe late 50s, but 60s, because Al Roker went to it as a kid, and that it was a failure, obviously, because who the hell wants to go to that in February in New York State? And so it closed. But I imagine if someone were trying something like that, and Willie goes to him and he says, "Listen, yeah, I'm on, I'm applying to, run the concession stand or something like that.
Yeah.
But I see that you don't have your own haunted mansion.
And I know I can
trust
build
me.
you one.
I can do a hell of a haunted mansion.
Yeah.
You got to believe me." They said, "Well, maybe. In the meantime, we've got something else for you to do." And so Willie ends up as like chief running brave in the Indian village, shirtless in January in New York, miserable. No, there's nobody there.
He's wishing that he was at
He's
Knott's
in-
Berry Farm out in California.
He's in a wigwam
Yeah,
with a fire that he's desperately holding on to.
sure.
And that's when he gets the note to go back to Collinwood.
And he runs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then he gets there and realizes, oh shit, I don't want to stay here. And then he makes a dramatic re-entrance. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not sure which one it was, but I have a vague recollection of what you're
Are
talking
there
about.
names? Did you find names
Yes,
of
it's
these places
defunct
that they might be?
parks, but
What are they?
let me
What are the
see.
potential names?
Let me see. List of defunct amusement parks.
This is something very patriotic sounding, I think.
Okay. This would be, I'm looking for years now. Okay. 64, 45 to, no. 63 to 83.
This is
No.
pretty short lived, I think.
Yes. There's one that was only open in 1964 and it was never completely completed. That was Space City, USA. That was in Alabama.
That?
Huntsville.
No.
No, and I'm looking, and they all. What's going on? Los Angeles. Hold on.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm gonna swing down through.
Nothing is weirder than a closed amusement
Was it
park that's
New
still
York
left.
here?
Was it Fairyland Park?
I would not accuse Al Roker of hanging out in such a place, but if he did,
1949 to 1968. There was also one from Adventures in mid 1950s to late 1970s. There was Freedom Land USA 1960.
Freedom Land.
That was it.
Yes. Freedom Land.
Yeah.
Where was that?
That was Freedom Land USA 1940. Or sorry, 1960, 1964. That was CB Wood, and it was, let's see, where's it at? Park featured. It was number 6. Hold on, sorry.
Now I've got to get involved. This is crazy.
Additional surcharge. The park featured a number of sections inspired by different geographic regions of the United States, with corresponding rides, restaurants, and interactive activities. Little Old New York, inspired by life in the late 19th century. A horseless carriage.
North Bronx.
It was North Bronx. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Freedom Land USA. That's got to be it.
Yeah.
60 to 64, like you said. It was built on marshland owned by Webb and Knapp Company. And a guy by the name of William Zeckendorf was the guy that came up with the idea. It was a major owner.
Not that they need this plug.
Yeah.
But I will say, if you enjoy Jules' show, and if you enjoy this sort of bizarre, pop culture free association hell that Alan and I drag it into so often, you've got to listen to Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast. Yeah. It is one of the best interview shows out there. They ask all the right questions of amazing people. Start with their Tom Savini podcast. I'm sure they're fans of Dark Shadows. Chris Gilbert's passed away, so I think the show kind of. But for what it was, God, it was good, and I'm sure they would have enjoyed having Catherine or Laura or David on. They just didn't get around to them.
Yeah.
Man.
And there's a good episode with Greg Mank, who's a friend of mine, and he is, there are three. They're Tom Weaver, Greg Mank, and the late great he wrote David Scal, as I think the three greatest American horror historians who ever trod the earth. And so at least one of them's on there, and you hear them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys want to add about this episode before we go?
This is one of those ones that begins and ends with really good melodramatic sort of cliffhanger type extension at the beginning, and then a brand new cliffhanger at the end, of course, to bring us back fully into the present, but with oh my God, what's going to happen next?
You know, when I was making my list for my semi-secret project that I'm basically having to go back to the drawing board on, which is fine. And I had to pick one episode of Dark Shadows. You're going to watch one episode of Dark Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked one of the ones at the end of 1795. I actually think I picked the last 1795 episode.
Mm-hmm.
But in looking at it, maybe this one.
Yeah.
Because the criteria was, will you understand Dark Shadows kind of as a thing? You know, yes. And will you be hard pressed to call Dark Shadows bad TV? And the answer has to be no. You know,
right.
Based on the episode, and this one certainly satisfies both of those criteria.
It does. I think there are several that do, but this one is definitely in there. Absolutely. Yep. And it's structurally, it's very crisp in that respect of what Dark Shadows is. So yeah. But also the episode, that episode where Joshua confronts Barnabas is fantastic as well. The original 1795. It's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, this is the time trap is a really interesting. That's a good place to sort of start DS fans too. It's the time trap itself.
One of them, yeah, it's one of the good starting points.
Yeah, again,
and out of 1,225 episodes,
yeah.
What is it, about halfway through the series?
Yeah.
We're at 666. Yeah, it's about half. Well, it's a little
about 600 or so.
It's within 50. Yeah, of being halfway exactly. Yeah, because 12.
And so that's a great, and it's great because it's backwards looking. This whole sequence deals with Vicky and her fate, and it puts a nail in the coffin, so to speak, with one phase of Angelique.
Mm-hmm.
When we see her again, she is at the beginning of being a very different character.
Yeah, and
for me, the joy of 1897, which is all about transformation, more than any other part of the show, is Angelique's transformation.
Yes. There are several characters that do, but hers definitely is one of them. And her transformation is not a smooth one. It goes back and forth because of her jealousies or because of this resentment or that resentment. But she ultimately does, in several instances, provide enormous support to the cause of, this whole idea of solving this problem of 1897 and coming out the other end.
And in terms of looking forward and looking back, and I don't want to make you guys my hostages. I hope you're okay with me kind of prattling on about this stuff. But in terms of looking forward and looking back, so now we're in a position where Barnabas is the main character. Yeah. And because we have settled a lot in the past, again, we're back in 1897, or 1795, we're dealing with this stuff. But because it so definitely deals with Barnabas and his sentimentality towards Vicky, and that he is mature about relinquishing his obsession.
Right.
And, and Vicky, I think, started out as an obsession with Josette. Oh, but I think it very quickly is like, come on, that's not Josette. You've seen Josette. We come on, Barnabas, that. That as much as or more than the episode where, the emergency episode or whatever it is, where the ghost of Josette shows up and says, Barnabas, let it go. You can let it go, we basically see a Barnabas who has kind of, his life is no longer ruled by this obsession with Josette, because he had to unhappily give up her avatar with Maggie when he thought Maggie was dead.
Right.
And maybe the whole obsession with Vicky was just guilt. He just felt
was,
guilty.
Yeah, and it was also, I mean, he was still in a fever dream out of the coffin
Yes.
at this point too.
Yes.
So it's like, I can do Vicky instead. Yes, she's so smart. She loves the past. Blah blah. So I mean, he can rationalize it.
And so at this point, who Barnabas Collins are you going to be?
All right.
Who you want to be, Barnabas? And he gets a real choice, and of course, it's going to be family savior.
Right.
It's, he doesn't matter, but David matters.
Right.
If he was a lousy future of the family, true, but David's not.
Right.
And which is a weird statement because David kind of is, but
Yes.
But compared to Barnabas, David's
not a
whole life
Yeah.
is ahead of him to mess up.
There's also with him trying to rescue David from the clutches of Quentin and the forces of evil and all of that. There's a way of balancing the scales for him for terrorizing the kid back in 1967, which he did quite deftly and quite intensely for several months.
Yes.
He was trying to drive him crazy. Then he was thinking of killing him, and then he was blah blah. So yeah, this is kind of a balance of the scales. But everything sort of balances more now that he, like you say, he's unfettered from his obsessions, or at least some of them, and he's now willing to move forward.
One of his biggest moves forward prior to him willing himself back in time, saving Vicky's ass, is when, Dr. Eric Lane says, hey, you could have Peter Bradford's face. And finally, Barnabas makes a decision. No, I don't want it. Let him go.
Yeah,
there have been moments.
There are moments.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And I think
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for me, the big moments are Peter Bradford, where he literally says, no, enough.
Yeah.
Or not Jeff Clark, when he's about Jeff Clark's face.
Yeah.
When he destroys the equipment. Yeah. Where he is going to be a good person earlier, with the Jeff Clark business.
Mm-hmm.
And then he is going to be a good person to the extent that his needs don't even exist anymore.
Right. Self-sacrifice is a possibility here now.
There is something bigger than he is, because he is still an important part. I will no longer do evil, with the Jeff Clark beat, but then I will no longer exist if I am party to evil going on. My existence is worth trading. And then here, beyond all of that, and I am big enough to let go of the past.
Yeah.
And this thing that has defined me, that I'm willing to be defined. I can be a good person, I can be a selfless person, and now I can be a person with a future.
Mm-hmm.
He accepts he takes ownership of the past with Jeff Clark.
Yes.
He takes ownership of the present with Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And now he takes ownership of the future with letting Vicky go.
Yeah.
Past, present, future. I got to write a book about that.
I mean,
seriously, that's a good model.
It's at least good for a good long meaty essay. I think.
Yeah. That then you put a book around with old essays. I see. Cosmos agrees with me.
That's right.
Sorry. I think too, with
some
him going back to 1897, because you have somebody who's going into the past knowing what he's going to become again to help two kids who are near death's door. I think that's the part of his penance toward treating David the way he did too. He now has to help David and Amy to prevent this whole thing and find out what's going on to a past he again, he was in his coffin. He had no real decision in the first time around. Well, now you have a lot of decisions to make, and it's not none of it self-centered toward himself.
It isn't, and he's gotten a rare pleasure.
Yeah.
For the first time since Sarah's death, and since Angelique showed up and started creating trouble, he gets to be dad.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, he's dad to Sarah more than Big Brother, given the Naomi's amazing capacity for procreation.
I know
On a
she's
long scale.
fertility arc is at least 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, 30 years after she hatches Barnabas,
Yeah.
she's able to pop out, Sarah, which is astounding. God bless her. Wow, they made them tough back then when they had short lives, short life expectancies. So, talk about a Wold Newton
all that
moment.
Sherry preserved her eggs.
Yeah, that's a true Wold Newton superpower that Naomi has. So seriously. So anyway, having looked at that, he gets to be dad again in that whole sequence of Roger's in Boston,
Right?
And he's having to make choices for the kids, and what a wonderful slice of just regular mortal life.
Yes.
He got to lead. That must him just remember he's reading the paper and they want something and he's like, no, kids. I love seeing Barnabas be able to do that. And as much of a pain as that was for Barnabas, he must have just really been satisfied.
That's what to say. This is actually a part of domestic life I haven't experienced since I was 20. It's because he had.
That's what he was fighting to get back to. Normalcy. Yes. And nothing's more normal than that.
Yeah.
Then along comes Dan Curtis with his cigarette holder and says, "Now we got to go back to the past and make you a vampire.
I'll make you suffer."
I got to buy another golf course.
That's true. Golf is an evil sport, by the way. It's terrible for the environment. It really is. It's just terrible for the environment.
Was an enthusiast for 60 years of golf. He loved it. Yeah, I agree.
The art I appreciate. Do it inside.
But the environmental impact is ridiculous.
It's hideous.
And down here in Florida, there's like every other tract of land is a golf course now, except it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, golf itself, as an environmental impact, is just monstrous. Jewel, look it up. I know you're an avid golfer, of course.
The enormous amount, just the water alone that you have to use it in order to keep.
My wife cannot stand golf. She hates it. So
a terrible spectator sport.
I'm more of a physical.
It really gives
sport guy. Yeah, I'm more of a football, basketball.
That I had not heard. Like curling? Are you talking
about I like watching football, basketball, hockey. I don't really watch too much.
Curling, that great.
Basketball has no
it has
physical contact.
I want to watch something entertaining, like Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows basketball.
Given Dan, people who say Dark Shadows is long and boring. You talk to Dan Curtis because it must have been moving at breakneck speed compared to putting golf on TV.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
Dark Shadows is just for Curtis. But I mean, the only thing that would have been more lazier for Curtis, well, not lazier. I take that back. I didn't mean that. Would have been more lackadaisical a piece of programming is if he had put on cricket.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring cricket to American TV. It's going to be a big hit.
It's going to be huge. I can sell anything.
You know what I'm most shocked at about that whole thing, though, when you think about it? I'm surprised he didn't.
Use that verb again.
I'm surprised he didn't take Jonathan Fred, have him in the Barnabas Collins costume, and just put one at night in a golf hole and say, "Dark Shadows and golf go hand in hand." I'm shocked.
Oh, I mean, the fact that he did not at one of the opens have Jonathan Frid as Barnabas Collins.
He sent him everywhere else. He sent him everywhere
else. But golf is not that sensationalistic.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
They have him out.
He was going to Stern Brothers and selling shoes, which he did one Saturday afternoon.
Oh, shit.
Were they
Monster
still
suit?
X-raying feet back then?
Yes, yeah, probably.
Were they still X-raying feet in those days?
I don't know. Probably. This would have been what, 68?
There are prints out there of Jonathan Frid's X-rayed feet.
Probably.
That's a fan thing to get.
Uh-huh.
And Wallace McBride gets an envelope of Jonathan Frid's hair, for God's sake.
That's right.
How the hell did he pull that off? People sent him stuff.
Yeah, that must have been Catherine. Catherine had that hair
That
in
was
the
from
envelope.
Catherine.
It must have been. She must have given him some of it, but she also gave.
I don't think so. Someone anonymously sent him an envelope of hair.
I wonder if they got it at the auction.
I don't know.
Because Catherine had some, and I think that's what happened to her. She auctioned it off.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Before we go, link to Alan Glenn's YouTube channel, Calling Sport After Dark, is going to be in the description box. Link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Daybook About is going to be in the description box. I will send you guys a link to the movie Vampire. Make sure you turn the subtitles on. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. It's practice. And Joel, here's a funny thing with subtitles. When you have subtitles on, if you turn the volume up, it makes the font bigger. With subtitles, turn the volume up, the letters get bigger.
Yes.
Try it out.
Yes. Guys, thank you. This was a lot of fun. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.